I'm a big believer in self-fulfilling prophecy and I to an extent our ability to manifest things in our own lives. And sometimes it's a wing and a prayer is all you've got, and optimism and hope they can be really powerful things.
Welcome everybody to Unleash Your Greatness. I'm Adam Platt, and today I have a super awesome guest on. Her name is Mindy Henderson. She is a motivational speaker, a writer, a health and accountability coach. She's also the host of the Truth About Things That Suck podcast, as well as a guest contributor of morning motivation tips on CBS Austin, as well as We Are Austin Lifestyle Morning Show. And so I want to welcome her. Welcome, Mindy, to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah. So you and I chatted. It's been about a week or a week and a half or so ago. Mm-hmm. And I just loved your message. I loved everything that you had to share. And I don't want to ruin any of it for anybody, but you've had kind of a crazy life, started life. And for those,
it's been a windy road. Yeah.
So I want to share, or I want you to share kind of your story and for those who don't know, she is in a wheelchair and you've been in a wheelchair your entire life, correct?
Yes, that's true.
So kind of, I guess, where did your story start and how have you gone from where you were to where you are today as a coach and doing all these amazing things, helping people?
Oh, well, thank you for that. It's like I said, it's been a windy road. The story really begins when I was a baby, and I just kind of felt the collective roll of the eyes from the audience. But I'll make it concise. But my first real big challenge and sort of at the heart of my story and everything that I do today is, like you said, the story of my disability and the just learning over the course of life to navigate adversity well, as I like to say. And so when I was only about 15 months old, I was diagnosed with a neuromuscular condition called spinal muscular atrophy. And if you're familiar with muscular dystrophy, it kind of falls into that bucket. So it's a progressive condition, which means, of course, it gets worse over time. I did start to stand and walk, but around the time, 15 months, almost 2 years old, I pretty much lost that ability. And there were some things going on. We embarked on this sort of medical scavenger hunt to figure out what was going on. And ultimately, I was diagnosed at the Mayo Clinic by their head of neurology at the time, who told my parents, there was a lot less known about this condition back then. And in addition to losing my ability to stand and walk, my parents were told that I would lose all of my cognitive function. And they were also told that I probably would not live to be 3. So, it was a bit of a bumpy start to life. And I was obviously too young to understand what was going on and to really process it. But, the way that the story goes, my parents really during this time sort of set the tone for the rest of my life and the way that I was going to live my life ultimately, because, despite what the absolute experts in their field were telling them, that basically there was no hope, there was no treatment, no cure, no medication, they decided that if this was how the story was going to go, they wanted to know that they had done everything they could to help me. And so my dad, who had been a pretty serious athlete, he was a football player for University of Wisconsin, was scouted by the pros and knew a thing or two about anatomy and physiology and exercise and injuries and physical therapy, started to work with me. And lo and behold, little by little, bit by bit, I did start to get stronger. And very quickly, the 2 out of 3 of the doctor's predictions for me were proven untrue, fortunately for me. And even though life in a wheelchair was a fact, the other predictions were not true. And I like to tell that story because it really set a tone of sort of hope and optimism for my life. And my parents really gave that to me, just sort of the belief that things can be different, things can get better, things can change, and you don't necessarily need to know how, but you just have to have the belief that things can be okay again. And they really instilled that in me. And fast forward, I lived a lot of life. I'm not going to tell you how much, but suffice it to say, I've had my fair share of bumps and bruises along the way, some related to my disability, some not. But I've become something of an expert in my life of just handling daily challenges. And now my mission really is to work with other people to try to help them, because looks different to everybody, but everyone has their own challenges that look unique to them. And so trying to help people navigate their own challenges well, and really to stop using limitations, whatever they are, physical, financial, social, whatever the case may be. Stop using those limitations as excuses, and really to see all that they're capable of, which I believe each and every single one of us are capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. So,
Awesome. I agree. And, the things that you have gone through and where you're at today, and with your attitude of a positive mindset, is such an inspiration, I think, to so many people.
mhm,
And I love that you're talking about how so many times we let, some of the silliest things,
mhm.
for someone who doesn't experience life in a wheelchair like myself, we let some, in what I would think, in your opinion, would be such silly things, stop us from living the life that we want. And so I love the fact that you're like, hey, let's not limit ourselves, even though we might have these struggles in our life. And
Yeah, and I will say, I'm certainly not one to judge anybody else's challenges, and I don't think that you can compare. Nobody's struggles are any worse or better than anybody else's. If you've got a challenge or a struggle in your life, that's real to you, and it's hard. The definition of a struggle and of adversity is that it's hard, it's difficult circumstances, and it stands to reason that it's going to bleed out into other areas of your life and maybe make things a little bit more challenging, and maybe even drain you and um, make you a little bit less inclined to put forth the energy to want to go after certain things. But that's the whole thing, is just understanding that it's kind of a certainty, that things are going to go wrong and we're going to have problems, but being able to live your life in such a way that you can sort of preemptively get ahead of those things and get yourself into a positive place, so that when bad things happen, you can handle them a little bit better and it's not going to impede your progress on other things.
yeah, for sure. And you're so right. Everybody struggles, and everybody's struggles are at different levels. And that doesn't
Uh-huh.
mean that they're any less of a struggle than anyone else's.
Yeah.
I love
I
that.
think I heard Oprah say once, pain is pain. And it's so true. It doesn't matter the magnitude of pain, it all hurts.
Absolutely. I love in the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Oh,
He
so
talk,
good.
yeah, Yeah, wonderful book. I refer to it all the time because it's just amazing what he went through and still came out with such an amazing perspective.
Yeah.
But in there, he talks about how, everybody's box is a different size or
Mm,
room is a different size. And our struggle is like a gas that gets pumped into that room. And it doesn't matter how big the room is, the gas is going to fill up that room. So it's kind of his way of saying what you were saying is it doesn't matter how big the struggle is or the adversity in our life.
mhm.
It's going to encompass our life no matter what. And we just
Yeah,
have to look for ways to get through that and look past it and
it's
move
true.
on. So uh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so you're in a wheelchair and how much use of your, because everybody's different. I'm assuming,
Right.
and I'm not an expert in this field, so I'm just trying to
No.
clarify. You have ability to use your arms or not use your arms, or
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm technically classified as a quadriplegic
okay,
because all of my limbs are affected. And really, all of the muscles in my body are affected. So everything from my legs to my trunk to my neck to my arms, it is all affected. I would say, probably my legs are the most affected, and I don't stand or walk at all. I do have use of my arms enough to type on a computer. I actually drive a car that looks like NASA built it. It's all hand controls and touch screens and things. So it's kind of I've had to over the years be really intentional about architecting my life because I say all the time whoever created me had a really good sense of humor because they created me with these physical limitations and a dependency on other people to do a lot of things. And yet I have this fiercely independent spirit. And so I grew up and lived my life knowing that I wanted all of the things that anybody else could have. I wanted to grow up, I wanted to go to college, I wanted the career, the family, kids, all of the things. And it wasn't, I don't think, until, I think there's something so beautiful about sort of being young and dumb in our teen years and our forgive me 20-year-olds that are listening, but to an extent our early 20s. And it's a really good time, I think, to figure yourself out and your life out because you don't know what you don't know yet. And so I had all of these visions for what I thought my life was going to look like, and I would jump in, like going away to college, for example, and until I was actually in the planning stages and neck deep in planning to go away to college, I didn't realize necessarily that, hey, it was going to be a little bit more challenging for me than somebody else because, you have to figure out, suddenly I'm living in a dorm without my parents or my family. And, to the level of minutia of how do we get in the front door? How do we unlock the door to my dorm room? How do we turn on the light switch when the switch is 6 inches higher that I can reach? And what if it's raining? How do I get to my classes? And all of those things. And so it's really been kind of an endeavor over the course of my life to figure out how to architect this life of independence. And I talk all the time about kind of project managing your adversity, which is really what I've learned to do because with a disability, you've got all of these limitations and these daily challenges that you kind of have to get through minute by minute.
right.
But if you break them down minute by minute, you can get through each one eventually, by asking questions, by putting forth effort, by being creative. And, I think that can apply to a lot of things that people out there potentially could be going through.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And project management, like you were talking about, or just goals in general, I
Mhm.
think if we can break those things down, like for instance, your goal is let's figure out how to turn the light on, right?
Right.
Sometimes. and
Right.
break those down and then put forth effort and some creativity probably
Mhm.
to reach that goal or that objective in life. And so I love that you shared that. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
And I also I want to get into some other stuff, but first
Yeah.
I want to circle back to a little bit of your story and how instrumental your parents were in helping you get to where you are today. Because you talked a
Mhm.
lot about your mom and dad not listening to the doctors. Your dad, obviously, with his background in sports, is like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to get you up. We're going to move you. We're going to, work your muscles the best we
Yeah.
can. uh, I think it's amazing to have that support group, and I think anybody who is going out there, uh, first of all, there's oftentimes we don't have that support group,
Right.
but how beneficial it can be to find that support. And I think that people who maybe don't find that support, whether it's their parents, their spouse, or whatever, go out and find that support. You
Yes.
can join groups or go to events and meet people. Surround yourself with people who are going to support you and cheerleader you on, because that can be such a huge factor in our success just to get going and get the momentum rolling, I think.
100%. And I was incredibly fortunate. You make a really good point because, because I did grow up in the family that I grew up in. And, my parents, I think, we have to listen to our doctors, right? We rely on them to be the experts, but second opinions, especially when it's life and death, is not a bad thing. And optimism is never a bad thing. And that's, really what my parents employed. And hope and optimism and believing that, well, we're going to try this anyway. It's not going to hurt anything. Doing a little physical therapy never hurt anybody. So yeah, that was really the approach that they took. And the other thing that they really did for me was they had expectations of me. I had well, still today have an able-bodied sister, and they had the same expectations for both of us.
Wow.
I was expected to do well in school, to get good grades, to have friends, to have interests, and to get involved in things. And so they really didn't let me use my physical challenges as an excuse either. And heaven help me if I tried. That just didn't go over well in our house. And so there may be people listening who are parents of kids with disabilities. And to them, I would say that that was one of the biggest services that my parents did for me. And I know for a fact that it was hard for them because, when you're 8 years old and you're crying because you don't want to put the leg braces on, and it's uncomfortable, and there were things that they had to make me do, or that they had to enable me to do myself, that were so hard for them. And they've told me that there were days when they wanted to go in the bedroom and cry. There were days when they did go in the bedroom and cry, because of the expectations that they had to put on me, and the way that they had to help me get through these things. And but I'll tell you what, it served me well, and it taught me to be self-sufficient, and it taught me that I was still fully capable of doing whatever I wanted to do. I maybe just needed to think about what it was going to look like a little bit and how we were going to accomplish it. So absolutely. And then, if you're just like you said, if you're, I think, goodness, the past year with COVID and quarantine and all of that, if that hasn't taught us how important human connection and relationships are, I don't know what will. And so I think this whole past year just goes to underscore what you said about, find people who are going to support you. If you weren't gifted an amazing family that supports you no matter what and stands behind you, there are people out there ready to be your cheerleader. So step out of your comfort zone a little bit and look for them, because they're there, I guarantee.
Yeah, beautifully said. I agree, and I love that you said the optimism goes a long way. Like,
Mhm.
and I know we beat your parents to
No, it's
And
okay. They've
the fact that
given us a lot of material to work with.
oh, it's great, and I love just bringing up some of these key points that having an optimistic outlook of what you
Yeah,
want is so important. If we dread the future because you know COVID is stopping this or that, or my limitations are preventing me from accomplishing things. If
yeah,
we have that pessimistic view instead of an optimistic view, then we're never going to take action. We're never going to put forth
yeah.
the effort to accomplish or get where we want to go. And so, um, you know, Tony Robbins says that mindset is 80% of your success, and I
Oh
believe
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
so,
It's
just
huge.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in self-fulfilling prophecy um and I to an extent our ability to manifest things in our own lives. And sometimes it's a wing and a prayer is all you've got, and optimism and hope they can be really powerful things, and if you walk through the world with pessimism and believing that the world is against you and that all you're going to get is a big dumpster fire all the time, then that's what you're going to get. It's like the universe is going to say, okay, wish granted, and that's what's going to come your way. So, and it's hard. I make it sound maybe like it's really easy, but this is the way I've lived my life for 40 something years, and I've had a lot of practice at it. And I do think that it's something that you have to be intentional about. It doesn't come naturally to everybody. It was kind of, I think, embedded in me when I was a kid, which again, I was fortunate. But I've also made some very intentional choices at key points in my life where I decided that I just needed some new thoughts, and then you get intentional about catching yourself, actually listening to the thoughts in your head, catching those negative thoughts and replacing them with more positive ones, and catching the pessimistic words before they come out of your mouth and you speak them into the universe, and instead, either just holding your tongue or changing the transcript a little bit and saying something more positive instead. I also think that gratitude is huge
mm,
when you talk about particularly preemptive skills and practices that are going to set you up well for success when things go wrong. Things like gratitude practices. If you write down 5 unique things every single day that you're grateful for 30 days. And that's the key. They have to be unique things. They don't have to be big things.
right.
It could be a cup of coffee or a song on the radio or whatever. But 5 unique things so that you're going through your life looking for things to be grateful for every day. I've seen the studies and I've heard the experts talk about the ability to move the needle in just 30 days, and going from maybe a high level or a high level pessimist to a low level optimist in just 30 days. So I do think there's a lot of power in things like gratitude, and it stands to reason that if you start to implement that practice, it becomes more and more natural. And that's the way that your brain will automatically start to think. And when something goes wrong, you're going to spend less time, I think, in that victim zone and move on to constructive solutions and responses much more quickly and much more naturally.
Yeah, totally agree. And I love the gratitude, and I do the same thing. I don't do 5, I do 3, but
Yeah,
it can be whatever amount, right? I know people who do
absolutely.
like 10 a day, but if you can just look for those small things, and kind of going back to that Man's Search for Meaning, the Viktor
Mhm.
Frankl book, he talks about how they could determine almost to the day when one of the other concentration prisoners was going to die, because they
Yeah,
could tell that they've given up hope,
yeah,
and they've lost the optimism for life.
yeah,
And that's pretty fascinating, and it really does prove how important it is to have an optimistic outlook for the future, as well as being grateful for what you have. Because, again, Victor didn't have a lot to be grateful for, but he found the smallest little things,
Yeah.
in the sunrise, in the morning coming up and being beautiful, or, a kind gesture from another prisoner, or something. He looked for those small things. And so if he can do that in those horrible circumstances, living in a concentration camp in Nazi
Seriously.
Germany, why
Yeah.
can't we find those times or those things in our life that we can be grateful for? So I love
Yeah.
that. Thanks for sharing that. That's always a great reminder for any.
Yeah. My pleasure.
So I I love the fact that you just have this positive attitude, even though you're in a wheelchair, and you struggle with things that most of us take for granted, like turning on light switch, like you were talking about in your dorm rooms when you're going to college, or opening the door, getting through a door, right? Can't always be
Yeah.
an easy thing. And how do you keep such a happy uh, mentality in those circumstances? How do you what have you found? I mean, we've talked about gratitude, we've talked about just being optimistic about life and things, but there's times where you've got to be just like, man, this is awful. But how do you keep that? Because you're a very happy person. Anybody who's
I try
listening
to
or
be.
watching this
Yeah.
can tell that you're very happy. How do you keep that positive attitude so often in your life?
um, you know, it, I think there's a few things. I think, and fortunately or unfortunately, the first thing that's coming to my mind is the ability to laugh at ourselves and our situations, because sometimes truly things are awful, but sometimes they're so awful that they're just plain ridiculous, and there's something to be said for just laughing at the sheer ridiculousness of the situation. And so that is definitely something, and the friends and family that are in my life, if I don't laugh at myself, they for sure will. So, sometimes I'll try and laugh at myself first, but yeah, I think that's key, is just being able to find some humor and some good naturedness about your situation, because you know like my situation, for example, I can't change it. It's out of my control, and so to lash and to fight and to flail against it, and to have these crazy outbursts, or harbor anger and things like that, um isn't constructive. It's not going to be fun for the people around me. Ultimately, even though it may feel good to get a burst of anger out in a moment, that's not the way that you want to live your life, and I know that about myself. And so I try to find good in every situation, and I think that one of the things that I've seen in my life, like I said before, adversity is different for everybody. It looks different for everybody. And some people's adversity is much more visible than others. So many people walk around in this world who are maybe having the worst day of their life, but you would never know it. And you're, crossing paths with them at the grocery store or the bank, or, whatever. And, but mine is very visible, and I think that that's almost been a blessing, because it's allowed me to see the generosity and the kindness that exists in people. And I think that has been it's been something that's really shaped the way that I view the world. And I really truly, from the bottom of my heart, because of the way that I've been treated by strangers my whole life, I really truly believe that people are good. And I believe that people want to help each other. And that we all have kindness and compassion in us if given the opportunity to express it. There's the exceptions out there. Somebody is listening to us and going, "Oh no, my brother-in-law." But there are obviously the exceptions out there. But I think that because I have that knowledge of people and just the fortunate circumstances that I've had to come across so many of those good people who want to help fill my gas tank because I can't, get to the gas tank, or want to open a door for me, or, whatever the case may be. There's so much goodness out there. And when you get to see that on the regular, it warms your heart a little bit. And I think that that's probably a big part of what's made me kind of a happy, optimistic, positive person. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
I think it's important to point out that lots of times we struggle to ask for help or want
Yeah.
people to help us. And, in your situation, there's times where you just need help, right?
Yeah.
But for the majority of people, I think they're nervous to ask people for help, or they feel like they are going to look weak if they ask somebody to
Yeah.
help them.
Yeah.
And like you say, there's so much good out there and so many people willing to help if we just will put it out there and ask. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a simple thing like, hey, can you hold the door? Or um,
Yeah.
things like that. But
Yeah.
we got to be willing to, one, ask, or two, accept it when
Right.
people do offer, and they can see that maybe we need a little bit of help. So
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I don't know, there are different schools of thought on this. I personally am never offended if someone tries to offer me help. I see it for the kindness that it is. There are people out there who don't want someone to take it for granted that they maybe can't do something for themselves. But from my perspective, even if somebody maybe gets a little bit angry for having help offered to them, which is silly to even say out loud. I think it's always worth offering if you see somebody who maybe, I've had people come up to me in grocery stores who have maybe seen me in an aisle at the grocery store and then moved ahead 2 aisles and actually come back because it occurred to them that I might need something, or I might need help reaching something, or whatever. And whether I don't know, I can't see that as anything but kind. So I encourage people to reach out wherever you see that there, even if it's just that there might be a need. I think it's a beautiful thing to offer help. But I do completely agree with you. And I think that we all need to get better at asking for help and accepting help. Because, if I think about, for example, times when I've been able to offer help to somebody, it makes me feel so good. And so, but so for so many of us, it's hard to accept help because it makes us feel weak, or, whatever, or we don't want to be a burden, or we don't want to bother somebody. But if you think about it from the other person's perspective and know how good it's going to make them feel to be able to help you, it's a two-way street. It's a win-win all around.
yeah, yeah, so true. Amazing. So I want to throw this question out there, and because you've accomplished some amazing things. You went to
Oh,
school, you've got bachelor's and master's degree, you worked for 15-year career in software and leading teams. You've got all these, multiple singing appearances. You have all these things that you've done in life. What kind of drove you into the coaching realm? Obviously, it's because, in my opinion, you're very inspirational. But
oh.
what on your end would you say is the main thing that kind of drove you into the coaching area of your life?
The coaching was almost kind of a natural next step. Um, because the first thing that I really wanted to do, I've always loved public speaking. I actually gave my first speech when I was 4 as the Texas State poster child for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And
Oh,
so, it was something that I did from a really young age, and I got to see the effects of it at a really young age, and how helpful it could be to share your story and the impact that you could have. And so I worked alongside MBA for most of my life doing speaking on their behalf, but I always kind of had ambitions to broaden my platform and speak about overcoming adversity, at kind of on bigger and bigger stages, if you will. And so that was sort of the first thing that I went after, was the motivational speaking. And I started to do some of that, but I quickly learned that it's a really hard business to get into. And so that's when I started thinking about, I always loved to write. And so I've had, kind of a dream for probably 10 years of writing a book. And so I started to kind of dig in and work on that, because writing a book is kind of a natural entree also into public speaking. And so, and then, I, I needed more to do. In case you haven't picked up on it, I like to do a lot of things. And so, I started thinking about coaching, which just seemed so natural, because you mentioned my high tech career, and I spent a lot of years as a project manager and managing project managers, and all of this. And I think that I am kind of a natural project manager. And so I really love to help people project manage their goals and help them get to their goals. But then the motivational speaker in me loves to cheer them on. And so it was kind of a perfect marriage, when I decided to get into coaching. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Very cool. So you are a health and accountability coach.
Yes.
And so you help people, not only in their health goals, but also to help them be accountable for where they want to go. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about that. Like, what does that process kind of look like typically when you're working with someone? And of course, we don't have to go through the whole process, but
No, of course. Yeah, and honestly, it's pretty simple. If somebody's got a goal in mind, I work with them and help them kind of break down their goal into manageable kind of bite-sized pieces, and then I meet with them. I give them homework, and a list of action steps and things that they're going to go tackle that week to help them with that part of the project plan, so to speak. And then we meet again the following week, and that's where the accountability comes in. And they report back to me on where they are in their progress on the things that we've talked about. And then we talk about, based on how much progress they've made, what the right next steps are. So that's really, it sounds super basic, but that's pretty much the way that I work with people.
awesome. And I'm, cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
Wife and I are achievement coaches. And so
Oh,
we're
nice.
big on setting goals and
Yeah.
helping people achieve those goals. And
Uh-huh.
that's kind of our main focus. And then on top of that, we give them, the tools and strategies to help them, overcome
Mhm.
the things that are stopping them or holding them back and
Yeah.
things. But
And I think when, for me, goal setting, and success around achieving our goals,
mhm,
for me is, I don't know, it's almost kind of black and white. And that might be what makes me successful as a coach, because I really truly believe that with what I've seen in my life and what I've done in my life, I believe that if you just don't quit, you're going to get to your goal. And it's not to say that things aren't going to get in our way. We may have obstacles to overcome, and those sorts of things. But the common denominator between everyone who ever achieved anything is that they didn't quit. And so, I tend to break things down into a pretty pragmatic, unemotional, black and white way for people to try and make it, easy for them to step through the actions they need to take to get to their goals.
yeah. That's beautiful. And I agree 100%. You can look at any successful person out there and probably ask them what their biggest reason for being successful. And they're like, I just didn't stop.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing, is you can't find any single person out there who is successful who didn't just keep going. And even when, the problems came up, the
Mhm.
trials started, the struggle happened. They just kept going and pushing through. And so I agree. I think that's key to anyone's success. And
Yeah.
and anybody who just, and that's the thing is, we can look at successful people and be like, oh, they're successful. But if you really break it down, like, they're successful because they didn't stop.
Yes.
Anybody who just didn't stop eventually will get to where they want to go, because
Uh-huh.
it's just how it is, right? Like, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Eventually, you're going to get to your destination. Sure, it might take a while, but you'll
Mhm.
get there eventually. And
Yeah, and it may be a slightly different variation of what you set out to do. I think too, we have to be a little bit flexible in our goals. I talk about being black and white, but there is also an element of flexibility that I think that you have to maintain. And if something goes wrong or if one strategy doesn't work, you try something else. And that may lead you to a slightly different destination than you set out for, but it may also be a better destination than what you set out for.
right, yeah, agreed. And just because you have this like set goal of like, this is exactly how it's going to be, and you have this perfect vision of what it should look like, doesn't always necessarily mean that that's how it's going to be. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean it can't, but I agree. You need to be flexible and be willing to pivot here and there and take.
Yeah. And the people that you talk about who have accomplished great things and accomplished their goals, guaranteed at one point or another, they wanted to quit because it's hard. A goal is a goal for a reason. It's you can't accomplish it always in a single setting and or sitting. And so it's hard, but the best way to not accomplish your goal is to quit. So,
Yeah, exactly. And
mhm.
I would agree that anybody that we would look up to as someone who's successful, they have a story somewhere
Oh,
buried in their
sure.
past where they wanted to quit for sure.
At least one. Yeah.
At
Usually
least.
more.
Yeah, often more. But they found some way to push through.
Yeah.
You look at like Steve Jobs, right? He got kicked out of his own company that he
Yeah.
started, and then he went on and started other companies like Pixar and some very successful companies. And then eventually, Apple's like, "We're dying without this guy. We need."
Right.
I'm sure that was kind of a little bit of a,
That was
sweet,
a good day for him. Yeah.
yeah, sweet justice for him, where he's like, "Yep, you guys are asking for me to come back." But
Right.
yeah, I think that it's that way with anybody for sure. So,
Definitely.
thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
So you have done all these things, and I want, first of all, before we kind of wrap up, I want to make sure people who want to get in contact with you, reach out to you, or look into where they can find you,
Uh-huh.
they know where to do that. So where can people, and you mentioned a book, so you have a book out there, correct?
Not yet. So
Okay.
I'm working with a literary agent right now. I got an agent last year, which was a super exciting milestone, kind of on the path to my goal. And so he and I are shopping it to publishers right now.
Great.
So fingers crossed that there will be something soon. But yeah, the best way, you know, fail safe way to get a hold of me is to go to my website. It's just mindyhendersonspeaks.com, and there's a contact form there. You can reach out, send an email. All of my social media is linked to my website, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the things. I'm particularly active on Instagram, which is at Mindy Henderson Speaks is my handle.
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, and the other thing I'll mention is if you sign up for my emails on my website, I've got a free 7-day positivity challenge that you'll get emailed to you for free just for signing up for email with me.
Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I think we can all use some more positivity in our lives for sure.
I don't think there's ever too much.
I agree. I agree for sure. So I always like to kind of wrap up my interviews with this last question, and it is, if there was 1 to 3 things that you would say someone needs to unleash the greatness within themselves, what would those be?
Oh boy. I think, oh goodness, I have like 15 things hitting my mind right now.
Top
Um,
three. How about that?
yeah, I would say, we've already covered this one, I think, but don't give up. Don't make excuses. If there's a reason why you believe that you can't do something, really examine that and determine how true it really is. If it's time that you think you don't have, how much time are you spending on Netflix or streaming or on social media or whatever. I somebody asked me the other day if I had one regret about my career, and I told them that I didn't start sooner, and I told myself the same lies, that I didn't have time and I had a family and a career and all of these things, but I could have found an hour a week to work on something that really, really lit me up. So I think that's the first thing that I would say is, stop making excuses, especially if it's something that you want, that lights you up, if it's something that you've been holding on to that you cannot shake loose of and you can't stop thinking about, it may very well be your calling. It may be the thing that you're here to do. Um, so give it a try. No excuses. Don't quit. Like I said, we've covered that one. And then, be flexible, creative, and open. Some things start out looking one way and they morph into something else. So, let yourself be led to an extent toward whatever it is that you're building. And between your knowledge, your intuition, and whatever it is that's leading you towards something, be open to all of that. And I've seen some pretty amazing things happen that way.
Very good. I love those points. Don't quit. Just keep going and then take action.
Yes.
It's key for sure.
Yeah, do something. People say it's the hardest thing so often is getting started, but when you take that first step, it's so much easier to take the second step and then the third step and the fourth step. You gain momentum and it gets easier and easier and easier.
Yep. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Like the old Chinese proverb, uh, uh, trip of 1,000 miles begins with a single, step, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
You got to take that first
100%.
one. So
Yeah,
getting started is definitely the hardest, and then you gain the momentum as you continue to go. So
absolutely.
thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that, and I am so grateful to have you on the show and to share your insights and your positive attitude. Despite your challenges in life, you still have such a smile on your face and
Oh,
doing such amazing things out there, helping and motivating people to
well,
live their life.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I really do hope that people will reach out. I love to hear from people. I answer all my email, so yeah. Let me hear from you and what you're working on.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are listening, either on YouTube or on the podcast, I will drop the links for Mindy below this, and you can reach out to her. Go to our website and reach out to her either through her email or her email list, or sign up for that positivity Saturday challenge. That's awesome. So,
Thank you.
um, any last words before we kind of tie things up?
No, just thank you for having me, and I hope that it was useful and helpful to somebody who was listening. That's my goal.
Absolutely. I know that people that are listening are going to find you very inspiring and
Aw,
sharing some great things. So, Mindy,
thank
thank you
you.
so much. And for those of you who are listening, reach out to her. And I want to end by just saying, go out there, everybody, and live your greatest life and start tapping into the greatness that is inside of you today and taking action towards your dreams and goals.